So the other thing that I put on our and I saved this for the end because spoiler alert, we're gonna be talking about the ending of Better Call Saul. And so I figured it was probably better to wait it that way. People that haven't seen it can sort of tune out after this. We'll do no anonymous way at the end. We only have 2 questions. So if you want to skip ahead a little bit, go ahead. Spoiler alert, Better Call Saul, spoilers. But you finally got around to watching Better Call Saul. And as a direct comparison to us being scared that Game of Thrones wouldn't stick the landing, and they didn't, I was never, ever, ever at any single point in any episode of Better Call Saul for 5+ seasons that they wouldn't stick the landing.
Mm-hmm.
I was so confident that they would get it right, that even if I didn't like it, they would get it right and they would do a good job. Do you agree?
Yeah. I think they stuck the landing. Holy shit, that finale. The entire last season. It was just beautiful. It was amazing.
And again, not to continue to diss Game of Thrones, but the ending will be bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
This is the definition of bittersweet.
Bittersweet. Oh my God, yeah.
And I told you, I said, it's bittersweet. It's actually bittersweet. It's not like bullshit bittersweet that they sold us, but they didn't cash in on. This is actually bittersweet.
It really is. The fact that that he was gonna take 7 years and then last minute he went from anti-hero to just like hero in the last fucking minute, called fucking what's her face? Freaking
Kim Wexler.
Kim Wexler, and then took the 86 years, like, bro. And you know what a cheap writer would have done? This was something I was worried entering the last season, I was worried that Kim Wexler
was gonna die.
Yeah, I was just like,
you saw Breaking Bad, right?
I did see Breaking Bad, yeah. She wasn't in it though, right? She was like,
right, but that was one of the theories, and I get deep into the Reddit of my favorite shows. So there was a lot of theories. The whole theory since the beginning of Better Call Saul is, once we started to find out the characters, is when would we see Lalo and Nacho, because those are like the ones that are mentioned when we first see Saul Goodman, and then later on, because we know Gustavo dies and we know Mike dies. And we didn't know Chuck, and we didn't know Howard, and we didn't know Kim Wexler. So it was always like, oh, maybe. And then the theories got more and more. Were like, oh, Kim Wexler is just she's there during Breaking Bad, but we don't see her. Like she's running the offshore corporations for Saul, or she's doing this. And then there were some theories that she died. But the more you looked at it, like the more you saw their love story, the more you saw her love story with his love story with her, the less it made sense that the Saul we knew in Breaking Bad, I don't think he could be that guy if Kim had gotten murdered.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if Kim died, I don't think that Saul Goodman would still be a lawyer. I think it would have just ended him. You know what I mean? Because about how much he loved her.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but in mind, I thought, how do you get Jimmy to turn into Saul? And I was expecting for Kim Wexler's death to be the catalyst to that, actually.
Okay.
But it wasn't. It was more so a slow burn into how one bad action justified the next and justified the next, and then all of a sudden he's full Saul Goodman, and he's doing really shitty things in the same way that Breaking Bad's protagonist was also doing the same thing. They all started off being normal, nice guys, by and large, but debatable because they always had those traits right within them. When we go back to his childhood and stuff. So I was very happy that they didn't kill her. I don't know why that was my expectation, but they didn't. And I love the ping-ponging back and forth in time. The whole how it's off from the first season in the Cinnabon, and I had no idea, and then at the end they just close it off. Oh, it's just so good. Like we jumped forward, and then how they
Yeah.
bring back Kim Wexler and his secretary, and it was just so good.
The time machine references and that whole
Mhm.
thing, and I think I always thought that it was because it was like, does Jimmy die? Does Jimmy get away to Alaska? Because I think if you look at the main protagonist of Breaking Bad, you know, Walter White dies on his own terms, right?
Mhm.
With his baby Blue. Pinkman suffers more than anybody,
Mhm.
but he gets away and he gets a new start in Alaska. And then it only made sense, I think, that the third person, Saul, the lawyer, who sort of made a lot of it happen, as he said at the end, you know, like he had the plea, right? He had the
Mhm.
story to tell. They took me out there, put a gun to my head, and anything I did from that point on was because I was afraid for my life, right?
Mhm.
But you know, when he told the truth and he said, you know, if it wasn't for me, he would have been dead in a month, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
You know, that was him, number one, you know, doing the thing that Walt did when he called Skyler and said, you know, you don't know shit, it's my business, blah blah, to try to save
Taking the
her,
blame. Yeah.
taking the blame, and also, you know, cleansing himself because I mean, we saw him as Jimmy McGill, we saw him, and then the whole thing is like, oh, everybody, this is the moment that Jimmy becomes Saul. You know, it was always
Mhm.
they was always trying to find it, like when he said it's Saul good man at the end of one season,
Yeah.
or you know, but so I think it was masterfully done. And I think it
It
was
really
just the right
was.
amount of callbacks, the right amount of cameos. Like, I mean, like the first scene after the Cinnabon scene is him walking out of the courtroom, and then we see the white Cadillac, and then it's like, oh, dude, he's already got the Cadillac, and then it's no. Then we see the Esteem, the little yellow piece of shit, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So ever since the first episode, they've sort of been really masterful of that. I mean, it is a slow burn of a series, but
I
you know,
like Breaking Bad. Well,
yeah.
yeah.
But Breaking Bad also had a more frenetic pacing, I think. But like,
Mhm.
and then the people, and then obviously Giancarlo Esposito, Jonathan Banks as Mike Ehrmantraut from the original Breaking Bad, and Bob Odenkirk,
Mhm.
obviously. But then the new characters, Ray Seahorn as Kim Wexler, who deserves an Emmy.
Fuck yes.
Patrick Fabian as Howard Hamlin is a beast. Michael Mondo as Nacho is incredible, and Tony Dalton, probably the MVP of the later seasons. Tony Dalton, um, as
I don't.
Lalo.
Oh, okay, Lalo. I was like, I don't know who he played. I'm sorry.
No, it's because of
Um,
it's because of the last name, right?
Dalton. Yeah, I was like, who's Dalton?
Ironically, Tony
Lalo.
Dalton is the most Mexican person in the entire series.
He saved it for the Latinos in that one. I mean, he's the only one that could speak proper Spanish.
Yeah, I think I've had this discussion in some Reddit threads where it's like, you know, what is the criticism of the show? There's only one minimal criticism of Breaking Bad and the whole season is that I think they have this confidence that the choice of actor supersedes any need for being able to speak authentic Spanish. So they're like,
Yeah.
Giancarlo Esposito is the actor I want to play Gustavo Fring, and I'm gonna force him to be Chilean. And I don't care if it
Mhm.
makes absolutely no sense how he speaks Spanish. He is Chilean. And when he talks to
Yeah.
the cartel, he's gonna talk in Spanish, even though the cartel speaks English.
So they speak English. Yeah, they should have just made it that.
They speak both, but for some reason he's choosing to speak in his very poor Chilean accent. Uh, Nacho, Michael
Nacho's
Mondo,
good.
he does decent. He does
Yeah.
decent. The guy who plays the Theo Salamanca, he also cannot speak. He also sorry.
No, it's
No,
so bad.
it is very bad. And then yeah, Mark Margolis, who plays Hector Salamanca, is not very good. Juan Carlos, who plays Luis Moncada, who play the twins, they're much better. And then Tony Dalton. And then the story with Tony Dalton is that the first day on set, he when we first see Lalo, he's in the kitchen making tacos, right?
Mhm.
And I guess the line that he was supposed to say when Nacho was asking him what, you know, like he's like, hey, come and eat. He's like, oh, es una receta de familia, tiene perejil or tiene something real basic, right?
Mhm.
And then or cilantro, tiene cilantro, and then that was how it was written. And he's like, no, that wouldn't be enough of a reason to make it like a special family recipe. Like, what if I
Yeah.
say, and he said like some cactus or something like,
Mhm.
it's got this in it, and he changed the line, and ever since then they let him change some lines that didn't sound authentic as a native speaker. So
Mhm.
I think they did learn their lesson a little bit, and he did save it a lot for them. But if I had one criticism, and one very minor criticism at all, is that over, and I understand as a director and as a producer, you make that decision, and it's not a bad enough decision that it fucks up the whole series. Very
Mhm.
similar to how I felt about the actor who played Pablo Escobar in Narcos, who was Brazilian and didn't really have an authentic Paisa Medellin accent. But do you, besides the accent thing, do you think there's any other valid criticism of the series?
Um, I I I really can't think of one. Like
Mhm.
it's just such a solid character drama. It's has great writing, great acting in the Spanish. Um Fuck, it's just no, it's airtight. It's a really good show. I enjoyed it. There were some times that it's slower paced, but you know you're in for that and you're staying because you want to see the character development. And you want to see where this goes. And it's funny because I feel like I started watching it because I wanted more Breaking Bad, right? I was just like I need more Breaking Bad, so I need to see what this is about. And at the end, not that I wasn't excited that all the OGs came back and all of that, I was excited, but I honestly, when Walter Wankman were on screen, I was like, oh yeah, like I forgot. Like I would, I was more excited to watch the ending of Better Call Saul than I was to like for all the throwbacks. Like I was excited, but it wasn't like that wasn't what did it for me. It was like I stayed because it was such a good show, standalone, Breaking Bad or not. So fuck, yeah.
Yeah, I thought the you're 100% right. It's almost like the Godfather 2 and the Godfather. Well, it's like the Godfather is so iconic, but the Godfather 2 adds to the beginning and the end of it. It's because Godfather 2 takes place before and after the events of Godfather 1. The
Mm-hmm.
same way Better Call Saul takes place before and after the events of Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm.
And in some ways it surpasses it, and that might be because it's like they had a better budget, more time to plan. Breaking Bad, its first seasons were like, they look different, da, da, da. So but they were right, it changes a little bit how you see Breaking Bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I, for one, thought that I would want to rewatch Breaking Bad right after I finished it, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't. I didn't feel like it. I didn't feel like watching Breaking Bad at all. So I think it says what it is, and I think that, like you said, the transition after the breakup with Kim, where they break up, and then we just fast forward to seeing him in his house, and
Mm-hmm.
sort of like, I think the term they described, like Peter Gould and Vince had described, is he flattened himself out. So we see that Saul Goodman is this character, this flattened out version of Jimmy McGill, and it is because of the pain that he has from losing Kim that he
Mm-hmm.
sort of fell into this alter ego. And then we see him again signing the divorce papers, and
Mm-hmm.
and then we have the scene with her and Pinkman, um,
Yeah, that was a good scene.
where she's like, when I knew him, he was a good lawyer and stuff like that. And
It's like, is he good? He used to be.
yeah, and then I don't feel sorry for Kim Wexler because she's banging that guy in Florida that goes, "Yep," when he has sex.
I know that. Okay, maybe that's another maybe that's another complaint that I have about this show is what the fuck was that Florida arc about? What the
Yeah,
fuck? That's
it
like
just
something Kim Wexler would never.
yeah, no, especially she's making tuna fish with Miracle Whip. That's fucking
Yeah,
that's tasteless. That doesn't
like
taste good.
I, I don't know what they were trying to portray, that she's miserable without Saul. Like we get it, but did you have to make her life that tragic?
Yeah, she had the ponytail was gone.
She had no friends,
And she had zero
friends that she
flavor.
had like I'm like, yeah.
It was just vapid
Housewives.
conversation, boring ass boyfriend.
I'm like, she could have had a life and still, you could have still told us
She
that
did
she
live.
missed all.
She lived by herself though. She had her own house. She probably had a little property in Florida. She took her
Yeah.
little money and got down there. Just got a regular ass shitty job.
Yeah.
She's got like a marketing job for like
Yeah.
a sprinkler company. Yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah.
think that was yeah.
It was just meant to portray that she leads a very boring and dull and Mrs. Saul and all of that. But man,
And I think,
really, like,
well, do you think maybe she's in penance for Howard? I mean, do you think that she's purposely living because she
uh,
stopped being a lawyer, like she felt she didn't deserve to be a lawyer,
yeah.
and she's gonna obviously feel guilty, and she broke up with Jimmy because she knew that they were bad for other people. So
Hmm.
maybe that's her penance. Maybe that's why.
I mean, that could be it. And she did give Howard's wife, the whole story and ability to sue her for everything she has. So maybe it was. Maybe she didn't feel like she deserved to have a happy life.
And then the bittersweet ending of Saul, like you said, going from 7 to 86 years. I mean, I was hoping that maybe they were going to go back to the original offer of 30 years,
Yeah.
because that was what they were like. There was like one time, take it or leave it offer 30 years, and he was like, actually, and then
Yeah.
and then he goes back and he says, and at that one point when he says, no, I'm not. He says, I'm Saul Goodman, and then later on he says, no, I'm James McGill. You know,
Yeah.
and then he's like, he's rejecting the Saul persona. He's going back. He's absolving himself of all his sins. He's realizing, like when Walter White tells him, "You've always been like this." You know, he's remembering these things, his regrets.
Hmm.
He wants Kim there, so she knows that. You know what I mean? That he's back to. It's important for him to see her, know that he's telling on himself from shit that nobody knew about, the
Hmm.
malpractice insurance,
Hmm.
all that stuff. It was just, and they tied all the stuff that they were building up to. They tied it up.
Hmm. It was beautiful. Game of Thrones, take fucking notes.
Beautiful. They
Ah.
they stuck the fucking landing, man.
Mm-hmm. Mwah. It was just
And
chef's kiss.
and then the irony is, Jimmy McGill is now Jimmy McGill again, but everybody in prison is going to call him Saul and know him as
So
Saul.
yeah.
And I'm assuming that he's in, and then you could just sort of imagine that Kim, like I think I heard in one of the podcasts for the show, they were like, he's like, oh, who knows, Kim might come visit him once a year, and this and that, and even Peter Gould was like, I don't know, man, you know who Jimmy is, like I don't think he's gonna be in for 86 years.
Yeah.
Like even in their minds, like the characters are there, and you can imagine him in prison, making connections with the guards, running little, not even being a scam, but just being himself, and
Yeah.
building relationships, and probably taking care of his own, like parole, and trying to, you know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
think I think there's still hope, and it's bittersweet because we got them connected again. They're sharing that cigarette. There's a literal red spark still
Spark of
between
yeah.
them.
Oh.
We see them smoking a cigarette just like we see them in the first episode. Another thing that he says in the very first episode is when he does that speech, was in the conference room, and he says, "And you will repent." And at the end, he does repent.
Yeah.
Um, they brought everything back so beautifully. I
Yeah.
mean, at the end with the black and white Gene episodes, where you like, was it an artistic choice? I mean, that's one of the few areas where people are like complaining about. They're like the two Gene episodes and all that stuff. But I think that was
Mhm.
necessary to sort of bring us back, because they were teasing the black and white, and we would get one clip of it per season. So
Yeah.
I think that it makes sense for some of that. So I loved it. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
I think it takes its place in like the top echelon of TV series, and it makes the connection with Breaking Bad even better. I think Breaking
Hmm.
Bad, El Camino, and it's great. I do think that people should probably watch Breaking Bad first to enjoy it if you haven't watched either or.
Yeah, because if you watch Better Call Saul, it's just the payoff will not be as great in the sense that you won't know what the fuck is going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's more. Yeah, it's definitely not because you want to know what happens to Gustavo and Mike and Walter. You want that first. It's definitely
Mhm.
a troop. It's not like It's not like those things where like the Marvel Cinematic Universe in chronological order. They're like
Yeah,
how you can
no.
watch the movies or you can watch all the Halloween movies in year.
Yeah,
Anyway,
exactly.
that's been Better Call Saul.
Yeah. Better talk, Saul. Am I right?
Better Talk Saul up to 217.